अब जीवन आमा हो 10 महिना पेटमा बोकेर राखेर कति वर्षमा उसलाई हुर्कायो हैन बढायो त्यस्तो के गर्नु त्यस्तो गर्ने त्यस्तै हो अब के भन्नु हामी
हटौँ न हटौँ
death issue, contract issue, renewal and contract benefit.
From 2012 to 2015, we received around 433 cases only from Qatar, especially by our outreach officer. And if we speak about this year, we received almost 319 cases from Qatar.
319
cases. Yes. In this case, what happens is the RA promised them that you have get 11 to 1400 real salary in the Qatar, but they didn't get anything. They just get back in Nepal after 9 months without anything in their hand.
Okay. वर्ल्ड कप गराउनु आफैमा जुन एउटा राष्ट्रले एउटा देशले पाएको छ त्यो देशको लागि गौरवको कुरा हो त्यो पाउनु राम्रै कुरा जस्तो लाग्छ त्यो पाएर उनीहरूले आफूले गर्न सक्नु त्यो एउटा पक्ष रह्यो भने र अर्को पक्ष भनेको त्यहाँ जुन कामदारहरू जुन गएर काम गर्ने विषयलाई चाहिँ कसरी गर्छ कसरी चाहिँ कामदारहरूलाई सुरक्षित मर्यादित बनाउँछ भन्ने कुरो चाहिँ अब अहिले त्यसै भन्न सकिँदैन। त्यसमा अब त्यो वर्ल्ड कपको लागि 4000 मान्छे ठ्याक्कै डेट हुन्छ भन्ने कुरो चाहिँ अब त्यो त भोलिको कुराहरूले बताउने, अहिले भन्नलाई त्यो मिल्दैन, अनुमानित मात्र हो त्यो। र मलाई लाग्छ त्यहाँको सिचुएसन, त्यहाँको जुन चाहिँ टेम्परेचर, त्यहाँको एउटा वातावरण, त्यहाँको चाहिँ रहनसहनको कारणले गर्दा जति 4000 मान्छेहरू भन्दा पनि मेरो आफ्नो अनुभव, मेरो आफ्नो फिलिङमा चाहिँ, मेरो आफ्नो थिङ्किङमा चाहिँ 4000 भन्दा पनि बढी अझ त्यहाँ चाहिँ डेथ हुन्छ भन्ने चाहिँ मलाई लाग्छ।
म चाहिँ कतारमा अब रिफ्लेक्स त्यो कन्टेक्सनमा गएको, त्यहाँ अलि
त्यस्तो व्यवहार भएको थियो अब साथीहरूलाई होइन, त्यो गाली गर्ने, धेरै उ गर्ने होइन, बोल्ने जस्तो हामीलाई, मलाई पनि भएको थियो, मलाई पनि धेरै गाली गर्थ्यो, बेल्ने गर्थ्यो। अब जस्तै काम गरेर कराउँथ्यो,
नोकर जस्तो व्यवहार गर्छ कि हामीले। त्यो मुडी लिन आउनुभएको थियो, अनि त्यहाँबाट अफिस लग्यो। अफिस लगेपछि त्यो मुदिरले पासपोर्ट अनि त्यो एग्रिमेन्ट पेपरको साइनहरू गरेको सबै दिनुभयो। अनि त्यहाँबाट हामीलाई अब यहाँबाट 1300 प्लस फुट 300 भनेर पठाएको थियो। त्यहाँ जम्मा 900 रुपियाँ 900 रुपियाँ साइन गर्न लगाएँ। अनि त्यहाँबाट अनि रुममा लगेर छोडिदियो। हाम्रो रुम चाहिँ ठ्याक्क अन्डरग्राउन्ड थियो कि, त्यस्तै 20 फिट लम्बाइ होला एउटै रुम थियो, 20 फिट लम्बाइ अनि चौडाइ त्यस्तै 13 फिट जति थियो। 13 फिट चौडाइ 20 फिट लम्बाइ थियो। अनि बेडसेट केही दिएको थिएन, त्यो एउटा फर्म दिन्थ्यो अनि एउटा त्यो ओर्नी, त्यो के भन्छ त्यहाँ अर्को त्यो ओर्नी एउटा दिन्थ्यो अनि सिरानी एउटा दिन्थ्यो। अनि खाना पकाएर खाने भाँडाहरू आफैले किन्नु पर्थ्यो कि। अब पुरै त्यो अब 1500 जना मान्छे एकै ठाउँमा सुत्नुपर्छ हामी।
अनि हामीले काम 1-2 दिन रोकिदिएको थियो। काम रोकिदिएपछि अब यता आएर कराउन थाल्ने, थर्काउने, अनि सिआइडीहरू ल्याउने, यस्तो तिमीहरू काम जाने भए जाऊ, नजाने भए म सिधै अब सिआइडी पुलिससँग पक्रेर जेलमा राखेर जानु पर्ला भन्नु।
अनि यो किलिङ गर्दै गर्दै ढलेको मान्छेहरू धेरै भेटिन्छ। दिनको अब 2-3 जनासम्म मर्छ त्यो सिटी सेन्टर सेराटन होटेलमा। 2-3 जना मर्छ, त्यही पनि कसैलाई पनि थाहा हुँदैन क्या। त्यो एम्बुलेन्स आउँछ, आवाज पनि आउँदैन, त्यतिकै लैजान्छ। हामी मान्छेहरूले देख्छ भनेर त्यतिकै लैजान्छ।
In concluding, we are facing a complex investigation with many international implications. The prosecution is ongoing and will take time. It would not be professional communicate to you today a detailed timetable. The world of football needs to be patient. By its nature, this investigation will take more than the legendary 90 minutes.
It wasn't about looking at countries on their merit and what they had to offer in terms of a World Cup bid. It was about the deals, the counter deals, the double deals that went on behind closed doors. That's the key point in relation to the whole bidding process. We had a budget in front of us which showed that approximately $6.5 million was allocated, $2.5 million to Asia, $4 million to Africa, and I asked, well, what's this for? You know, what are we doing? And the answer would be, oh, you don't need to know that. All of those discussions and negotiations went on behind the scenes. And to the point where I say in relation to the Australian bid, there was almost two bids. There was the public bid, for which, for the time I was there, I was largely responsible, and there was a bid that went on behind closed doors.
That we may be the lucky country.
I was a little concerned about some of the things related to the bid. I always remember very early on in January 2009, we had one of our international consultants visit us in Sydney, and he talked to us about the things for which he was responsible for, and that was the bid book, the technical inspection, and the final presentation. And he made the point that they all needed to be very good and very high quality, but he also said that none of them counted. And yet those three things, when you matched it up against the selection criteria for the bids, they should have been important. But when questioned about why they weren't important, the answer was, well, you know, these things get decided by other things. And in fact, we were even told that the executive committee wouldn't even bother reading the bid book. The best example of it in relation to Australia is happened in about September 2010, so approximately 2 months before the vote was taken, when we eventually found out that almost around about US $500,000 was paid over to Jack Warner, who was then the president of CONCACAF, for the upgrade of a stadium in Trinidad and Tobago. That didn't make sense for a whole lot of reasons. One, why did Australia or anyone feel compelled to have to give money to upgrade a stadium in Trinidad and Tobago? And the answer to that is because everyone looked at the executive committee members who were on the committee and what sorts of favours they wanted. So that was one of the flaws within the governance of the bidding process. The second thing is, in this instance, the money didn't end up in the bank account of Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. It ended up in Jack Warner's personal bank account.
The fact of the matter is that what has been revealed so far is a mafia-style crime syndicate in charge of this sport. My only hesitation in using that term is that it is almost insulting to the mafia, because the mafia would never have been so blatant, overt, and arrogant in its corruption.
People want change. People love football, but they don't love FIFA. And when I say they don't love FIFA, it's not about the staff of FIFA. It's about the people who head it up, the executive committee, the president. And people want to be able to have confidence have trust that the decisions that are made by that executive committee is in a way consistent with what we expect of our international organisations and governments.
Charles, I know you're in Puerto Rico, as you told me, but I want you to get a hold of me some which way. I'm setting up this thing with Don. I'll set it up for Monday or Tuesday. Probably at Boca Raton or wherever his office is at, Fort Lauderdale. Now, to Al Braverman, they're going to get a shot to do it. And you also, because you got the people, naturally. So let's see. And if you want to talk, he only wants to talk with the principals. He don't want any other bullshit around, he said. Charles, try and get back to me.
I managed Leon Spinks, former heavyweight champ. I managed Tyrone Booz, former cruiserweight champ. Junior middleweight champ Buster Drayton, featherweight champ Freddie Norwood, and for the briefest of periods, a guy named Jose Rivera, who was the welterweight champ. You fix fights to make betting money. You fix fights to get a fighter a championship. You fix fights to maneuver a fighter up the ranks toward a championship fight. You fix fights to win in order, again, to position someone strategically. You fix fights to lose in order to get paid and in order to make, betting coups. The way you fix fights varies greatly. You fix fights by buying judges. That's one easy way to do it. You fix fights by having the referee working for you so that if there's any way that the ref can stop a fight in your guy's favor, he does. You fix fights by colluding with the fighters, generally the loser. It's almost always a loser. Winners almost never know that the fight is fixed. One of the things that you're cognizant of when you are fixing fights is that you're doing something illegal. Something that theoretically can wind you up, wind you in jail and get people angry at you. So you never really say anything, nothing that's culpable. So there's a code. And if you're in boxing for a while, you know the code. Everybody knows the code. You will go into a gym where there's either a trainer or a manager, and you're looking for somebody your guy can beat. This is how these guys make their money. And it's interesting that people who lose in boxing, generally speaking, if they're professional losers, can make more money than winners. Winning costs money. Losing makes money. Now, that's not true, obviously, at an elite level, but at almost every other level, it's the case. So what you do is you say, I've got a guy, and he is looking for work. Looking for work is the first. Okay, so it means that he needs to win, and you want to keep him busy. The response to that is, I've got somebody, and generally the second phrase is, but he hasn't been in the gym too much. Okay, so the subtext there is he's not in good shape. And so you're honing in on where this thing is going to go. And you say, that's okay. I'd like a guy to get in a few rounds. That means it's going to be a knockout. At which point he goes, well, okay, I can do that, but really my guy isn't in shape to go more than 3 or 4. Well, that's okay. So you've just fixed the fight. Nobody's done anything illegal. Nobody's done anything where they've come out and stated anything explicitly. But that's a done deal. And you get what you pay for.
Can you say how many fights you fixed?
Hundreds. How many, I'm not sure, but hundreds. I see it all the time now. I mean, I don't make my living in boxing anymore, but I see fixes all the time, sure. It will always exist. It always has, always will.
All right, fans, here we go with our main event of the evening. With over 90 countries in 6 continents tuning in, it's showtime!
Vegas, I think, tends toward the sensational.
Irish Hurricane Peter McNeely!
Keep laughing. Keep laughing. Real funny, huh? If any one of you that doesn't respect me or what I'm doing or what I've been doing for the last 3 months since it was been announced, and going against a guy like this, you'd have a big dump in your pants.
Talk to him, Peter.
I'm Hurricane Peter McNeely from Medfield, Mass. On Saturday night, watch me kick Tyson's ass. But if you haven't made your pay-per-view arrangements yet, make them soon. Because remember what happens when I wrap you in my cocoon.
McNeely's manager was a guy named Vin Vecchione. Vecchione had no money, so I, for a while, was bankrolling what they were doing. I was bringing McNeely and Vecchione to New York for various things, and I was making fights for Peter. So, I mean, I knew them very well, and I was very involved in what was going on. So I bring Vecchione to Al Braverman's office, who's Don King's director of boxing, and we work out a deal for McNeely to be Tyson's first opponent, which is a completely win-win situation for everybody.
I'm just happy to be here. Everybody's made their statements. Mr. McNeely had a cute statement. I'm just ready to fight. Thank you, everyone, for your support. Thank you.
I get a phone call from a guy whose voice I recognize, but not somebody I really know. But, and he said, look, somebody thought I should give you a call to let you know that a bet got made, that the fight wouldn't. I'm trying to remember how he described it. I think he told me the fight won't go. It's not going to go 90 seconds. It was it was $1 million bet, and the fight's not going to go 90 seconds. Somebody thought you might be interested in that.
Mills Lane stopped that nonsense because they were starting to butt heads. Oh! Tyson with a left hook right up, and down goes McNeely again. McNeely's hurt this time, Steve. He's very hurt. He can barely stand up. And his fight's only got 30 seconds left. They want Tyson.
89 seconds, at which point Vin Vecchione steps between the ropes to prompt the ending to the fight.
Correct. That was not correct. That was not correct. He quit. That's it. He quit. McNeely has quit. He didn't quit. His corner threw in the towel. He didn't quit at all. McNeely didn't quit at all. His corner did.
Vecchione, who really had this thing figured out, understood that it was crucial that there be no finding of impropriety, because Tyson was the machine on which boxing ran. By far the biggest earner in the world. And, when he fights in Vegas, they generate $1 billion in added revenue. I mean, not from boxing per se, but, from all of the ancillary revenue. So it has to be okay. And Vecchione knows that. So he gets his payday, whatever it is, and I don't know what it is. I never did know what it was. And I get a phone call from him. And I'm still in Puerto Rico. He goes, you got to come to the house. I got to see you. And I said, I can't do it. I'm still out of the country. And he says, send somebody you trust. And when that somebody got there, he was given an envelope, and that envelope put my son through college.
I got hit, I got knocked down. The man's quick, he hits hard. I felt like the first knockdown was a good quick punch. On my part, it was a little bit of a flash knockdown. I was okay. The second knockdown, as the film will show, I was shaking and I slipped and I fell on the rope, and I twisted part of my knee. You see the you see the face. Look at the film. Just look at the film. Look at the film. My knee buckled. My knee buckled without even getting hit. Look at the film.
Imagine that you're up against a very well-placed, high-profile machine that is capitalized to a degree that you can't even begin to imagine. $1 billion, multi-billion-dollar industry. So this is a guy with nothing except for his brain and his nerve. That is the greatest single underdog score that I've ever seen in all of my years in boxing. The single most savvy maneuver that I've ever seen.
Pancada no coração. Foi essa decepção, Brasil. Em 30 minutos, tomar 5 gols. Doloroso.
Aí é que chegou o mais importante, o papel ter o futebol. O futebol é muito bom, né? As crianças têm muita escolinha aqui na escola, aqui na comunidade. Tem um amigo aí que tem uma escolinha, tem um outro clube que tem são 2, 3, 4, são 5 times. A comunidade apoia, tem sempre torneios, está sempre participando de torneios de comunidades. Daqui a gente reunia, e adultos, crianças, jovens, e era um passatempo, né? Uma área de lazer. A gente costumava sair daqui 1h da tarde para assistir juniores, aspirantes. O jogo de fundo era 4 horas, indiferente a ser Vasco, Flamengo, Fluminense. Qualquer time, clube, qualquer jogo que tinha, a gente se reunia aqui e ia para o Maracanã. E nessa que a gente ia, levava os filhos, levava o filho dos amigos. Era o lazer do dia a dia, do final de semana, o Maracanã. O Maracanã é tudo, né? Muito lindo. Quando você vai, casa cheia, Maracanã cheio, teu time numa boa fase, e você vê uma partida de futebol, é muito emocionante, não tem nada igual. Maracanã não tem igual. maior estádio do mundo, tudo de bom, tudo de bom. E hoje a coisa está mais difícil, porque está muito caro. É que, poxa, não tem como ir. O Maracanã hoje virou um palco assim de turismo, pessoas que vêm de fora, porque o carioca, só aquele que tem uma condição financeira muito boa para ir, porque o salariado, o pobre, não pode mais, que é muito caro. Então, continua bonito? Continua, só que para a alta sociedade, o pobre não tem mais esse direito de ir ao Maracanã para ver uma partida de futebol.
If we think about the stadium as a reflection of the city, we can say that the poorest fans have been expelled from the Maracanã violently. They've had their places literally taken away from them.
All around Brazil, people were asking this question, Copa para quem? Copa para quem? Who is this really benefiting? And of course we know the answers, and that's the elites, the elite politicians, the very narrow strata of the Brazilian, the highest classes. That's who the World Cup is for, not for the vast majority of Brazilian people. We're hypnotized by what's happening in the narrative of football, and no one wants to talk about issues because they just want to enjoy the circus. Now that the circus has gone, we can talk about these things again. And so it's a suspension of critical thought. It's a time of suspended animation where it's not just the country that stops, it's as if people's brains stop working as well. And so this is the crushing of dissent and debate about, is this worth it? Can we do this? Should we do this? Who was the World Cup for? When the ball is rolling, those questions were largely eliminated from public discussion. It's always the most vulnerable people that have this happen to them. We can go back to Seoul, 1988, to see the forced removal of tens of thousands of people from their homes there. Barcelona, 92, forced removal of immigrants' quarters in El Raval. Atlanta, 1996, forced removal of 2 African-American neighborhoods near the Olympic sites. Not so much in Sydney, but then the forced removal of tens of thousands of Roma people from Athens. 2008, 2 million people moved from the center of old Beijing. London, similar cases of displacement. And then again, we'll see this in Rio 2016, similar in South Africa. So this is a repeating theme that has different power articulations on particular places.
Thomas Bach is saying that we need reform because the Olympics are in a slow motion crisis right now. And you only need to look at the bidding for the 2022 Olympics to realize that. Because any voter who had the chance to vote on it in a referendum said, we don't want the Olympics. From Munich to Stockholm to Krakow to the canton in Switzerland that got to vote on it. So he is in a crisis. Comparing FIFA and the IOC, because they're in a crisis at the IOC, they know they need to change. Human rights need to be part of the equation for both the Olympics and for FIFA. I mean, right now, it's not at all a part of the way things are decided. I mean, just look at the evidence. Beijing, 2008, Sochi, 2014. Then there's Russia, 2018, Qatar, 2022. You can't tell me human rights are a serious consideration when you make those selections. The The idea that politics and sports don't mix is a fairy tale that people at the IOC and FIFA tell themselves to console each other around the evening fire. It's just totally untrue, and it's ridiculous to say so, and it really shows a selective ethics on their part. The way it plays out for politicians in Beijing or Vladimir Putin in Sochi is they get to stand on the world stage and look legitimate alongside this incredibly popular event known as the Olympics. And so they get to sort of enjoy the Olympic halo effect, if you will. And meanwhile, brush aside all their human rights violations and all their problems, with their democratic practice.
One thing that we've seen is that independent of the global economy, which has periodic fluctuations, the fluctuations of the profits of FIFA and the IOC only go like this. They only go up and up and up. And that means that they are completely disassociated from any economic reality of the places where they go. And the Olympic motto, bigger, stronger, faster, also could apply to the size of the games. Every Olympics is always bigger, it's always more. And so this idea that the event itself has to reflect the competitive nature of sport has to stop.
Veteran NBA referee is under investigation for allegedly betting on his own games. The gambling scandal has ties to the Gambino crime family.
Tonight, a former NBA referee accused of betting on his own games and working for the mob fears for his life.
1 year and 3 months behind bars for disgraced NBA referee Tim Donaghy.
My name is Tim Donaghy. I'm the former NBA basketball referee that was involved in the gambling scandal in 2007, to where I used information that I obtained from other referees in the league office based on relationships that existed between referees and owners, referees and coaches, and referees and players, and used that information knowing what was going to happen in an NBA game, and used that information to pass along to people associated with organized crime for a monetary gain. It all fell apart because at the end of the year, some of the people associated with organized crime were heard talking over a wiretap. So it got back to the FBI and they started a big investigation. And when I got there, I basically told them the truth, that I, was somebody who had gambled a lot in general and gambled on NBA basketball games. And they wanted to know how I was able to win so many games without fixing them. And it took a while and several meetings, but I explained to them that the relationships that existed, both positive and negative, between the referees and the players and the coaches and the owners, spilled out onto the floor. Through their investigation and speaking to coaches and owners and players and former referees, they came to the conclusion that what I was telling them was the truth.
We think we have here a rogue, isolated criminal.
The NBA reacted by basically saying that I was just one bad apple in the bunch, and trying to throw me under the bus. But what happened was they did a huge investigation, and the FBI came out and supported me 100% and said that everything that I said was truthful, and that the NBA had a lot of problems that they needed to clean up. NBA arenas are basically packed with 20,000 people. It's like a Broadway show when you have beautiful cheerleaders, you have the greatest athletes in the world running up and down the court doing things that most people could only dream of. So it's packed with excitement, and people love to be a part of it. You're making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 additional per year, tax-free. At the NBA level, especially during the playoffs, the league would really dictate what they wanted called in a game, and that would put a team at a huge advantage or disadvantage moving forward in a playoff series. And it was always a situation where they were extending a playoff series because the amount of revenue an additional game would be in a 7-game series was always something that was in the back of the referee's mind. Everything's fueled by money, and they know each additional game is tens of millions of dollars into the league office. So it's a culture of the bottom line, which is money. It was just a commonly known practice that the stars ran the league in the NBA. The stars sold the shoes and the jerseys, and the bigger market team is what got the NBA global attention and better ratings. So we all knew that we needed to give them an advantage in some way, shape, or form, and that's what a lot of the veteran referees did, and that's what a lot of the veteran referees passed along to the younger referees. As a young referee in Philadelphia, the Bulls were in town to play the 76ers, and that year they gave us points of emphasis as referees that they wanted to call during a game, and one of them was a spin move on the baseline, and I'll never forget, I was the referee on the play that was responsible to call that if it took place, and Michael Jordan did it, went up and had a monstrous dunk, and I waved it off and I called the travel. And right after I made that call, there was a timeout. Jordan rushed up to me. Phil Jackson came at me. 20,000 people in the stadium booed me, even though it was an away game for the Chicago Bulls. And Jordan said, what are you calling that for? And I said, you got the same training tape we got. That's the move that they want called to travel. And both Phil Jackson and Michael Jordan said to me, they may want that call to travel, but they certainly don't want to call it on me. And Phil Jackson pointed to him and said, they don't want that called on him. And it was something that really stuck in my mind because it bothered me that 20,000 people were booing at me. The whole Bulls team was coming at me, and everyone was kind of amazed that I made that call. So I spoke to the lead referee in the locker room, and he said, yeah, you have to realize that you don't call that against the star. You let that go and you call that against the lesser players. When they have a point of emphasis that they want cleaned up in the NBA, you don't do it against the star players. I think when you talk about gambling in the NBA with the referees or even the players, obviously the referees like to go to the casinos. We like to gamble, even on the NBA floor with betting on who would call the first foul of an NBA game. Basically, when you were refereeing an NBA game with two of your good friends, that you would bet $20 because that's what the tip was for the ball boy. So we would say, whoever called the first foul of the game had to put up the $20 tip for the other two guys. So we'd go out on the floor and we'd be running up and down the court, and we'd be letting fouls go because nobody wanted to call the first foul in a game because then you were responsible to pay that ball boy. So we'd have bodies flying all over the place, and nobody would be wanting to blow the whistle 2-3 minutes into a game, which is unheard of a foul not being called because of a $20 bet in the locker room. The supervisor of officials at the time came in the locker room at halftime and basically said, what the hell happened at the beginning of the game? None of you guys were blowing the whistle. I didn't want to blow the whistle. They didn't blow the whistle either because we had a bet, $20. And he just said, well, I don't want to know anything about that, and walked out. But nothing was ever done about it. So the league office knew that it had taken place at times. I believe for sure that the NBA didn't sue me because the last thing they wanted to do was having some of their referees, owners, or league personnel testify under oath that a lot of the things that I was saying did take place and were true, and it would be very detrimental to the league. So what they wanted to do was just, hopefully put me in jail for a long period of time and have this thing blow over. But it kind of backfired on them a little bit, and I was given 15 months in prison, and I was able to write the book and tell my story, which was something that they tried to squash immediately by going into the offices of Random House and getting my book deal squashed at first, and going into the offices of 60 Minutes and trying to get them not to air the episode.
olmasam ne olur? Benim için şampiyonluk bitti,
abi,
benim o.
Senin resmen
bir defa gitti. Senin haberin var mı kardeşim? Bak abi, bak abi. Kime şikayet edeceğim?
Rica ediyorum.
Bu kameraya yapıyorsan Başbakan benim pokarımı vermedi. Sen orada hata yapıyorsun.
Hata yapamam mı?
Niye yapıyorsun?
Hata yapıyorum.
O adamı rica ediyoruz.
Ben de rica ediyorum. Ya kardeşim, ya sen beni sevmek durumunda değilsin, ben değilim. Ama
Abi ben
tahammül edelim.
Abi tahammül lütfen
Tahammül
değil. Sen
edelim.
memleketimi rezil
Tahammül
ediyorsun.
edelim.
Memleket
Ya sen memleket yalnız.
Senin gibi Trabzon'da.
Sana yazık olsun abisi.
Sizin gibilerin yüzünden burada kupa alalım. Spora şey karıştırıyor.
Also, Sie können das nicht mal akzeptieren. Hier in Deutschland existiert Versammlungsrecht. Kupa değil o. Kupa değil. O kadar küçük
Ayıptır ya.
O kadar küçük.
Ne düşünüyorsun? Verelim kupayı size de bari susun bari. Başbakan karışacakmış işe ki şey yapsın. Kupa versinler bunlara. Ayıptır ya, ayıp ya.
Meine Partei ist Trabzonspor. Gerechtigkeit. Dafür trete ich ein. Ich protestiere gegen die Ungerechtigkeit im Fußball. Denn Fußball gehört uns allen. Wir wollen, dass der Fußballabend der sauber ist, wo Spiele nicht manipuliert werden. Denn Fenerbahce ist eine Macht in der Türkei, ehrlich. Also der Präsident, nach Ministerpräsident kommt, das sagen wir. Wenn man bei Fenerbahce Präsident ist, kann man sich alles leisten. Und auch, die haben auch Zuschauer, die haben auch Wähler. Also Wähler zu haben ist auch Macht. Deswegen, man wollte, dass Fenerbahce nichts passiert.
Dolayısıyla futbola bakışım benim dönemlerimde çok farklı dönemler geçirdi. Geçmişte keyif alan, ortak değer olan futbol bugün geçim kaynağı olmaya başladı. Geçmişte ekonomik olarak az kazanmamıza rağmen daha büyük keyif alıyorduk. Bugün çok kazanmamıza rağmen o keyfi aldığımızı düşünemem. Şimdi futbolu da eskiden garibanlar, fakir aile çocuklar oynarken zenginler izliyordu. Şimdi zengin futbolcular zengin olduğu için zenginler oynuyor, daha fakirler izliyor bence. ...2010-11 sezonunda ilk yarı 9 puan değildi. İkinci yarı yarış yaparken biz ilk yarıya göre 3-4 puan geride kaldık. Fenerbahçe sonunda aynı puana geldik. Ve ben son Karabük maçı bittiğinde... Ben şike sürecini biz hiçbirimiz bilmiyoruz. Ne kadar var yok diye bilmiyoruz çünkü. Sadece şunu söylemiştim ben maç bittiğinde. Yeteneğin ve emeğin savaşıyla paranın savaşında biz kaybettik. Yani bugün şike var mı yok mu diye sorduğunuz zaman Türkiye'de kimine göre var, kimine göre yok. Halbuki polis kayıtlarında var. O zaman hangisi doğru? Polis mi yanlış yaptı, devlet mi, savcı mı yanlış yaptı? Burada kötü taraf şu, yani ortada bir ölü var, bir katil var. Ne ölüyü gömdük, ne katili hapse attık. Yani o zaman boşlukta bıraktık bunu.
İstanbul 16. Ağır Ceza Mahkemesi Türkiye'de ortaya çıkan şike suçlarıyla ilgili bir karar verdi. Bu kararı sanık vekilleri temiz ettiler. Ama Yargıtay özellikle Aziz Yıldırım'ın suç örgütü kurmak suçundan ve şike suçundan verilen cezaların neredeyse tamamını onayladı. İstanbul Büyükşehir Belediyesi Fenerbahçe, Kardemir Karabükspor Fenerbahçe, Fenerbahçe Ankaragücü, Sivasspor Fenerbahçe, Trabzonspor Bursaspor, Eskişehir Trabzonspor ve Trabzonspor İstanbul Büyükşehir Belediyespor Yüksek Mahkeme Türkiye'de şike suçunu tamamen onaylamış durumda. Ceza yargılamasında Trabzonspor'u temsil ediyoruz. Hem de sportif yargılamada hem Türkiye'deki ayağını hem Avrupa'daki ayağını yürütmeye çalışıyoruz. Aziz Yıldırım evet o dosyanın en önemli sanığıdır ama tek sanığı da değildir. Türkiye Mahkemesi yani 16. Ağır Ceza Mahkemesi, İstanbul 16. Ağır Ceza Mahkemesi şike suçunu tespit etti, sanıklara ceza verdi. Bazı sanıklar hakkında da bu ceza Yargıtay tarafından onaylandı ve kesinleşti. Ama bir türlü bu cezalar infaz edilmiyor, adalet sağlanmıyor. Yani bundaki en büyük sebep de Fenerbahçe Kulübü'nün taraftar sayısının çokluğu, siyasi gücünün, ekonomik gücünün fazlalığı, Türkiye'nin en büyük holdinglerinin Fenerbahçe'yi desteklemesi, siyaseten tüm partilerin oy beklentileri nedeniyle Fenerbahçe Kulübü lehine davranması nedeniyle henüz bu ceza infaz edilmiş değil.